This episode is going to be the longest episode I'm probably ever going to record of this podcast. And it's the first episode of this podcast. Hi, I'm Nikki, and I am your host for the Samurai 8 cast. This is a podcast dedicated fully to Samurai 8. Probably just the manga, but I'm sure that an anime will come out, and if an anime comes out for it, we will also be covering the anime. But for now, we're just going to stick with the manga, because the manga is really all that we have to go by, especially since there's only one chapter. There's only 72 pages of this chapter, but it's phenomenal. I'm already excited. I can't wait to go through this, but it's going to be such a long episode. But don't worry, we're going to go through it, and we're going to have a good time. And hopefully, by the end of this, you're excited for the rest of the series, as I am. Or maybe you already are excited, and that's why you're even listening to this in the first place. But I hope that we all can enjoy this series together, and maybe, hopefully, with all of the optimism in my heart that I can pull together, we won't have a situation like the ending of Naruto where we all need to hold hands and form support groups for the ending of the series. So a few notes before we begin the podcast. I will be using the official Viz translations for these episodes, so please support them. It's only, I believe, at this moment of recording, $2 a month to have access to all of the Shonen Jump. I don't know if it's all Shonen Jump manga, because right now I'm just reading Samurai 8 off of it, but to have access to Shonen Jump, it's $2. It's not a lot. It's something most people can afford, $2 a month. If not, I understand, but I will be using the Viz translation, so if something seems off to you based on a translation that you're using, then you know why I'm using the official translation. So most of the other episodes will be shorter than this. This is just going to be a long haul episode because the format that I'm looking to do for each episode is that we do a chapter overview. So I'm pretty much going to retell the chapter to you. That isn't going to be too much of an issue, I think. You can always skip if you don't want to hear anything else about the chapter. You already read it. You've read it 6 times like I have. So I can tell you about this entire series. Or maybe even you want to listen to it because you haven't gone on to the things that I have picked up on. And sometimes the fight scenes can be a little confusing, or sometimes just anything that has gone interpreted. Maybe you misinterpreted it, or maybe I misinterpreted it. And yeah, so first part's going to be the chapter overview. The second part is going to be more of a surface level analysis. With that, we're going to just discuss like new characters introduced. We're going to go through world building aspects, some of the Japanese culture that's being introduced, plot points that they're coming up with, fight scenes, anything that is immediately relevant to the series, we're going to cover in that time space. And then finally, we're going to end it with a more deeper level analysis. We will be going through how the themes of the story are tying together, character development, sometimes the character relationships and their importance to the story, and really anything that isn't covered by just appearance, something that requires a little bit more of thought. Not to say that you guys can't think, or sometimes even I can't think. And if you guys believe that I didn't cover something that you thought was important, or you think that something I covered wasn't too thorough, always tell me. You can always email me at samurai8cast@gmail.com. I'll have the email in the description link. And I will definitely look through it. I will definitely try to rectify it. Obviously, I can't fix every mistake, but I will do my best. So we're going to wrap this section up by just, saying welcome. I hope you enjoy. I hope we have a great time together. Once again, I'm Nikky, spelled Nikky. I hope with this podcast we can have a good time analyzing together, hopefully researching and learning Japanese culture together. because Kishimoto said that Japanese culture is going to be a big part of the series, even if it is set in space and it is full of robots and samurai. He still wants to incorporate lots of Japanese culture, so there will be some base level research aspects. We can't go too deep into the research, mostly because it would be a lot of time. But if you are interested in anything, I hope that this definitely is a good springboard for you to research any of the topics that we cover. And finally, hopefully, maybe this could be a little funny. I do a comedy podcast as well as this podcast now. So if I make a joke, that's just on me and how I am. So I hope we have a great time together. So let's get started. So the official title of this series is Samurai 8: The Tale of Hachimaru. That, I guess, seems a little strange to some people. A lot of the time we have very modern names, and Hachimaru seems to be a more, I guess I would say, traditional or pre-modern name for Japanese culture. I'm obviously not the cultural expert for names in Japan, but use of Maru behind the names doesn't seem to be very common anymore. But this does make sense because Hachi means 8 in Japanese, so our main character obviously is personifying the number 8, which we will get to later on in the podcast. And so Samurai 8, the tale of pretty much 8 boy, makes sense. But Hachimaru sounds a little bit better than 8 boy, so we're going to say that, or else we're going to fall into, I guess, a magic 8-ball sort of scenario. So on to the chapter. We have 72 pages to go. Let's try not to let this drag on too long. So we start with a few color pages, which is great. Basically, it starts off with a look into space, I would think, where there is a flying whale, I guess, in space. There are some, pyramidal rocks that are out there. I'm not entirely sure, but I'm just going to assume from this because one of the premises that's immediately introduced is that samurai protect the galaxy, they protect the planets in this galaxy, and also a princess. We're going to learn about that a little bit later on, but basically what happens in this opening scene is on this whale in space, there is a samurai duty or a righteous calling, as it seems to also be called a samurai's noble calling, and this duty is assumedly given to you by some higher power. And within the first, page, the second panel even, they talk about Fudo Myo, who is actually a warrior god that they revere within the comic. What I wouldn't say narrator, but the person speaking at the moment in this scene, they're saying that their duty right now is to keep at bay the one who brings destruction. That is their calling. But while they are occupied, they are given their apprentice, I would say, or their pupil, their own righteous calling, which is to seek out Pandora's box. And within that box is the means that this warrior god Fudo used to save the stars, which I would assume means save the galaxy. So the galaxy has been saved before. The point of Samurai 8 immediately is the galaxy is in trouble and needs to be saved again. So the person speaking, who is the master of this pupil, states that she is stating that you must also seek out the 7 keys that will open the box, and that is your calling. So I'm not sure if the righteous calling is told to you, or you have to assume it or figure it out along your way as a path of a samurai, but she has assigned it to him that he has to find the 7 keys to open Pandora's box and to help save the galaxy. And the pupil immediately is protesting, saying that with the body that he's been trapped in, he's not really a samurai anymore. And the master pretty much ignores this. She's not very much bothered by this at all. She states that the chance appearance of yours must hold some meaning of its own. And we finally get a look at her then. And something that we should probably note is that Kishimoto usually likes to have a full Asian cast. So we do have a black character immediately introduced here, which is very exciting. Right off the bat, we get a black character. She is going to be black and Asian or what. But the fact that we already have a woman of color within the series is very exciting already. She is holding her own katana, and she immediately gives him some advice. And her first, lesson that she gives him in this scene is, you must keep your mind's eye trained not upon the dead fallen leaves, but the roots that grow deep and strong within the soil. The pupil that we are observing, he immediately just doesn't understand what she has said to him. So she reformats it for him and says, the most important things are not found where one can see them. They hide behind illusions and deception, disguising true nature as its opposite. And it's obvious that he at least cares about her input and her lessons, because these phrases will come up later within the chapter. So she states to him, this is why I speak to the core that lies deep within you. The key to saving the galaxy is already within your grasp. Now go. And she launches him out of the whale, and he's in a tortoise, actually. And she says to him, go as the great Master Fudo went, as the shooting star capable of granting any wish. So, already we have 2 pages. Those are the 2 color spread pages. It gives us a good introduction to the story. It states that there is some galactic problem happening, and Pandora's box has to help, which is a little strange, but we'll discuss that later in the episode. So on to the next few pages. So there's a battle happening right now. Kishimoto likes to use black borders to indicate the past or a different time period or scene or different venue from what is actual reality. This is an indication right now. So for the next about, I'd say 7 pages, it's black borders. So you can take this as a past scene at the moment. So we open up to see that it's a battlefield, and there are 2 animal-like creatures, but they don't look exactly like animals. One looks to be about a wolf, and one looks to be a lion, maybe. And you see 2 men standing next to their respective animals facing each other, and there just seems to be destruction everywhere. One of them, who is wearing black, states that he made quick work of his Komusubu rank holder. And for a quick bit, Komusubu rank is a ranking order in sumo wrestling. It is one of the lowest ranks, so I'm not really sure what that means in terms of this holder for this man, but I guess that's semi-impressive if he could easily destroy this one holder. So then the man in the black, he states to the other man that this has to settle it. You are this apprentice of the great Yasha and the 2nd generation head of the Kongo Yasha style. So this implies that their fighting styles as samurai probably have actual styles applied to them that they can recognize out of each other. This is very much in line with Kishimoto's style. He likes to give them lots of stylistic moves and techniques and fit within a theme of their own character. Now, we don't know what Kongo Yasha style means yet, but we're going to find out. The man in black immediately calls him out and says, you are the wandering lone wolf, and the samurai who travels with his lion dog holder for a companion. So, as I said, we had such a wolf sort of deal and a lion. The lion was next to the man in black. The wolf was next to the man in white. And so this, I guess the wolf is actually a lion dog, and a holder, I guess, are these animals. So we're going to obviously learn more as we go, but right now a holder seems to be an animal or helper in some sense of the word. I guess they aid the samurai right now. The man in the white states, I hate keeping the cat in the bag. It's just not my nature to stay quiet and hide my identity. And he goes to try to introduce himself, and the man in black immediately interrupts him and says he really just doesn't care. And he asks why this man in white is here. And during this, the holders are actually losing their outer bits, and they're attaching to their respective samurai and giving them samurai armor. And so while this is happening, the man in white states that he's come to claim one of the great Master Fudo's keys. And as we know, that was the task given to the apprentice at the beginning of the series, but this doesn't really look like the form of the apprentice. So this might be someone different, someone who's fallen in the past, but they immediately get covered in samurai armor, and it seems to be that a soul or core part of them gets attached to their swords and gives them also more powerful swords. They run at each other and they slash, and the man in white, his arm gets cut off. But then the man in black falls, and he states that the left arm was a decoy to hide your true strike. And you see that the man in white, actually, though he lost his left arm, he had a hidden blade on his right arm that he struck him with. The man in white states, "Suffer a flesh wound so that you may break bone. The most important things are not found where one can see them." And that is one of the quotes that the master had told him. So maybe they shared a master at some point who both learned the same lesson. But the thing with this is that you see the turtle flying above, and he states, "Now hand over the first key." The man in black states, "Just one question, can you truly save the galaxy?" And you see the turtle above looming over this destroyed battlefield. He continues to say that he will never survive if he keeps fighting so recklessly, and that he can give him the key, but there are 6 more keys. And he says that it is often said that the Bushido is the way of death, but it is not courageous to die like a dog. Bushido, in this context, I think people might get confused about this because there's multiple terms for samurai and Bushido and Bushi, and I'm just going to clarify right now. Bushido is the samurai code, and we'll explain a little bit more of that later. But yeah, Bushido is the samurai code, so he is saying that the samurai code is the way of death. So it's not courageous to die like a dog. The man in white says, "There's no courage in ignoring one's righteous calling. But if it is my calling to suffer a dog's death, then I would consider it an honor." So obviously the man in white, states his righteous calling, and he is sticking to it. He believes in his righteous calling, and that if it is to die recklessly and trying to get these keys, then it would be an honor to follow his righteous calling. So obviously these are something that is very important to their code, to their samurai way of life. The man in black immediately smiles. He's amused by this. His face pops open, and he says, "You have passed the trial of Great Master Fudo. It was not the sword at your side I wanted to appraise, but the courage at your core. And I will give you the key." And his body pops open, and you see his spine sort of deal pop up, and there is a box at the top where I guess your brain would be. And he just falls apart, really, with the spine with the box at the top. And the man in white states, who is the wandering lone wolf, he states, "At last, that's one. There's 6 more to find. And now to embark on the next journey." And he finally opens his one eye, which has had a scar over it. He's had his eyes closed, that he has not opened his eyes at all. And finally, the black paneling breaks, and it looks digital, and you see that the main character, Hachimaru, actually has a VR headset on. I guess he got the newest Nintendo Labo, but he immediately is celebrating. He's like, "Let's go." And he gets way too excited and hits his wrist against the top of his gaming set, I suppose. He asks if he broke his wrist, which most people hitting their wrist on the top of their anything, their wall, their ceiling, I don't think would really result in any sort of breakage, but Hachimaru apparently broke his wrist, or he might have. And if you see how he looks, he is a very frail looking person, so this is probably very reasonable. Now we're in all white paneling again, so we're probably in present day. And so the black paneling was probably indicative that that was a video game. And oddly enough, all of the terms and the callings and everything seem to match up with what we saw with the beginning. So we're not really sure what happened yet. But we see a man who, scolds Hachimaru for playing so many games and says it's time for his treatment. And you can tell it's his dad, because he says, "Be careful, what if you break another bone? What is this game you keep playing?" And Hachimaru states that it's just something that he found online. So I guess he's also, pirating games online for his Nintendo Labo. And he states, "And it was going great until you came along, Dad. Way to ruin the mood." So he turns to his dog, I suppose, and states, "And go get my cane, Hayataro." And Hayataro is this dog, and he replies with meow meow and runs off. Hachimaru immediately states that there might be a voice recognition problem, and his dad states that the low pet holder you've been tinkering with, are you sure it's not a cat? So I guess, The inclination is clear early on that a holder could be a bigger animal or it could be a small pet. I suppose they're all animal-like. They can be programmed. So even though they look like animals, it seems like they have core technological bases at them and that you program them and they work in such a way that fits with your programming. Hachimaru immediately takes offense to this because he programmed it and he says, isn't it obvious it's a dog, and points to it. And Hayataro brings back a katana, but it's not a real katana. It's just from Hachimaru's collection. It's not his cane. And he's scolding Hayataro, who just replies with a meow back at him. Immediately, the dad is he says it's not a big deal because he got Hachimaru a arm. And you can see that his left arm and left leg are actually prosthetics. So he will replace this part of the arm, the forearm, with an extension that has a cane attached to it. So he won't have to worry about Hayataro not fetching him a good cane. He takes another playful tease at Hachimaru and states that, it's not the holder's fault, you're the one who programmed it, and gives him this cane. Then we learn a little bit about the treatment that Hachimaru has to go through, which is he has to have a nutrition drip. And he's immediately upset about this because he states that he is afraid of pain, he hates sharp needles, and he asks if he can skip his nutrition treatment, and his dad says no because you'll die. And Hachimaru states that a Bushi warrior uses a toothpick even if he hasn't had a meal. Why can't we just skip the injections and pretend we did it? And he says, to that, because you'll die. And he states that Bushi make their living by being big and strong, and that's the opposite of Hachimaru, who is having treatment, who is frail and needs a cane and everything. While Hachimaru is struggling against his dad, he says the Bushi protect the planet and its princess. They defeat invaders with their powerful bodies and fierce courage. And this just shows another, a slight bit of world building that the entire world, at least this planet, has a princess, and that this princess, who the princess might also be just the princess of the galaxy, she gets protected by the Bushi, which I guess is another term for samurai, and they protect everything. And Hachimaru is saying, because they're the opposite of me, that's why he has this admiration for them. And he gets stuck with the needle, and he yells and screams, and his dad is just saying, how can you be a Bushi warrior? How can you be part of the Bushi Legion if you have a fear of sharp objects? And he says, you need to be protected. You're on the side that needs to be protected. He even tells Hachimaru that he has to suck it up, and he needs to learn to be a good son for once. Hachimaru gets upset, and he yells at him and says he's sick of this, he hates all the pain, he hates the needles, and most of all, he hates his dad, and he hates all his stupid rules. His dad says, hate me all you want. I'll do whatever it takes to protect you and keep you alive. That's what it means to be a parent. And Hachimaru is obviously not happy with this. He throws a ball to Hayataro because he wants to play, but he's frustrated. And he says that he would be a better son to his dad if he could actually go outside. And it gives us a shot of where he's living. It shows that he's hooked up to this big life support machine that's connected to the entire house, and he can see outside, but he just can't step outside. Basically, he's saying that, if he could go outside, if he could see the world, he would be a better son instead of being trapped in the house all day. And that if he could survive more than 3 minutes without being hooked up to the life support, maybe he would be a better son. And his dad says, well, that's what this is for. And he shows a sort of mobile chair. It's not a wheelchair, I would say, because it looks like it has legs to it. But he says once this mobile life preservation device is complete, you'll be able to go out in the world. And it won't be long, remember? And Hachimaru hates this because he apparently keeps saying to Hachimaru, it won't be long, it won't be long. And his response to that is, well, that's supposed to mean days or weeks. He says, it's been years. His dad says, well, he's going to go out, and it won't be long. And Hachimaru immediately says, there it is again, it won't be long. I guess I'll just have to sit here and hope you'll be back in the next couple of years. So then it cuts to, you can see his dad flying on a flying sort of motorbike sort of deal, but doesn't have wings. I'm not sure how it works, but it flies. That's all that matters. And he says that he just needs a locker ball. That's all he needs within his grasp to help Hachimaru. So then we cut, once again, there's a lot of scenes actually, a lot of moving parts within this series immediately for this. And that's great. I love it because it all comes together in the end. So basically, there's a man talking with a few others in the background. He says, "Boss, you gotta believe me. I'll get you the money this time, I swear." And it cuts to a man who's riding on what we can all assume any animals that exist at this point are holders. And this looks to be a horse holder. And he says, "I only believe what I can see. I don't care about the money anymore. You're going to have to earn my trust in a different way." And he pulls out his sword, and the man who's talking to his boss looks very nervous. He says, "You mean?" And the boss says, I'm willing to give an incompetent idiot who can barely hack it as a lawless bushi another chance." So obviously they're outlaw bushi as well, which is pretty interesting because I guess samurai and bushi are supposed to be very lawful. They're supposed to be following a code, and they're being lawless and against the law and breaking the law. So he walks up to what looks to be just a round rock, and the boss places his hand on it, and out comes a knife. And he hands it to the other underling and says, "Use this to commit seppuku." And seppuku is a form of suicide that you basically slash open your stomach with a knife to disembowel yourself. And we'll go into this more a little bit later in the podcast, but it is a popular form of suicide that was in samurai culture. So the underling has it, and he just looks very nervous to do it, and he states, "I can't do it." And he's just shaking while holding the knife, and the boss says, "I thought you wanted to advance from a bushi to a samurai." So immediately we know now that bushi and samurai are two different things. Bushi are the lower level form of samurai. The boss then sticks the knife into the underling, and he calls him a coward. And he says, "So, what now?" And this immediately parallels to Hachimaru, who in the next panel says, "What now?" And he's thinking to himself while he's sitting at home that he might have really went hard on his dad back there, and maybe he didn't earn it, but he backtracks on that immediately and says, "No, I didn't. It was his fault this time, I think." So this just shows that Hachimaru isn't so stubborn in his ideals that he's going to be mad at his dad for something that might not even be warranted to be mad at. So he then notices that Hayataro, who the ball was thrown for, finally comes back with a ball, but it's a giant ball with a design on it, mostly colored in. I'm going to presume it's red, and it has a mask with some swirls on it. And Hachimaru says, "It's huge. What did you bring back this time?" "The ball I threw was normal sized." And he's tapping, and he says, "A Daruma?" And we'll go into Daruma a little bit more later. And Hachimaru will explain the basics of it in a few pages. But this is definitely a good sign for him. We cut back. We see the rock. The boss says, "This one's no good either. So I'm down another pet hound. Gotta have to find a tougher one somewhere." And the guy's just bleeding on the ground. He's dead at this point, the underling. The other underlings are gulping because that's fucking scary. And you see the dad actually swoop in. The boss says, "And now we've got company." And he puts the seppuku knife that came out of the stone, puts it back in, and it closes. And the dad pulls out a gun, and he says, "I got your money, 200 million yen, so hand over what you promised." And the boss says, "No, come on, put down the gun. Here's the locker ball you wanted." So this is the locker ball. So it seems like the dad has been trying to actively actually get this part for Hachimaru, and he finally found it, and he had to get it through outlaws. So obviously he doesn't trust them very much because he pulled out the gun. So we cut back to Hachimaru, and he states, "You actually brought back something pretty sweet for once, Hayataro. The Daruma is an ancient kind of good luck charm," and you can see that he's using a sort of Sharpie or marker to color in one of the circles of the mask portion. And he states, "Let's see, I think you draw in one eyeball, make a wish, and it's supposed to come true." So he draws in the eye, and he clasps his hands together and says, "Please let me become a sturdy bushi. No, even better, let me become a samurai." So this shows that Hachimaru, also knows that there's a difference between bushi and samurai. And he states, a samurai like Fudo Myo, the shooting star, who flew freely across the galaxy. And he pauses. And he states, and also, please let Dad come back home safe and sound. And I think that's just a great, that's a great way to show that Hachimaru does care about his dad. He cares about, his family and the people around him. And even though they were mad, he does really want him to be safe and come back safely. And a voice comes then and says, so you care for your father. I like you. On top of that, you know the difference between a bushi and a samurai. Hachimaru's just like, what? Who said that? And he's looking around, and the voice continues, says, and why do you wish to be a samurai? And he's just like, where are you? The voice says, I'm right here. And it's a cat. That was the Daruma, but now it looks like the Daruma has become a robe that engulfs the cat. And the cat says, thank you for undoing my sleep mode. I am none other than, and Hachimaru just immediately is shocked. And, believes that this cat that can talk is breaking and entering and 6 Hayatara on him. And we cut back to the outlaws and the dad. It focuses in on the pendant around the dad's neck. And then the dad states, good, it's what we agreed upon. And he's looking at the locker ball. Boss is curious as to what's going on. He says, and what are you going to do with that? Become a samurai? You know a samurai's job isn't just guarding the princess and protecting the planet. So obviously this implies that samurai do more than just guard the princess and protect the planet. This is just probably some general consensus that civilians who are not bushi or samurai have. And the dad says, what do you mean? I'm not using for that. I'm only making a special wheelchair with it. So yeah, he's using it for Hachimaru, who has no intention to hurt Hachimaru or make things worse. And he says, and while I don't mean to speak ill of you in particular, I don't like bushi. I find them arrogant. The boss seems to take a little bit of offense to that. He walks over and he looms over the dad and says, you're mixing up bushi and samurai. Bushi are just ordinary human beings, and samurai are not human. The dad, tells him to stay back, and they look at each other. The boss, his, face starts to unhinge while he's stating to the dad, samurai are chosen by a warrior god for being the most elite of bushi, and they are given cyborg bodies. And his body pops open the same way that the man in black in that fight scene in the video game popped open, where the spine with a box on top is shown. And he projects from that spine a visual to the dad where it shows the body, and it's in a silhouette with the spine with the box in it. And he states to the dad, a memory unit called a key that resembles a spine becomes the base of the samurai. And so the key is the spine part with the box on top. And he states, everything around the key is constructed of cyborg parts. So what the picture states is the key is within the samurai, and everything else is pretty much machine. It then changes the photo to a locker ball, and he states, the warrior god Fudo Myo left us these little stars known as locker balls, and only those found to be compatible with the locker balls may acquire these bodies. And he cuts off his own arm and says, I don't die from losing limbs. I can walk through space as easily as I do on Earth. I carry a special soul within me. And you can see where his abdomen is, a soul appears. And this is a similar sort of soul that you see or did see in the video game aspect of this chapter. He states, not just anyone can be samurai, and his body starts to come back together. He says, if you attempt connection with the ball and fail, you die. And it cuts to that underling who has died, who is just laying on the ground, bleeding out, dead corpse. So the dad states, well, thanks for the history lesson, but none of that has anything to do with me. Now, do you mind? And he looks just so nervous. And the boss seems to be a pretty observant guy, and he states, oh, no, not so fast. If anything, you would know more about this than me, yes? And this presumably has to do with the pendant around his neck. So we cut back to Hachimaru at his house, and the cat in the robes is now sitting up. He's petting Hayataro. He has a cup of tea and a treat, and he says, look who's happy. This tea is too hot, though. And Hachimaru says it's because his tongue is sensitive, just like a cat's tongue. And he states, what's your name? And the cat states that he is called Daruma. So just like the ancient good luck charm that Hachimaru was talking about. So Hachimaru just states that he does look like one when he's sleeping all rolled up in his coat. Daruma goes to inform Hachimaru that, He's in this mechanical cat body for now, but he was originally human. And he's like, and I'll have you know, I was a dog person. That's why I make quick friends with cat-ish dogs. So obviously everyone can tell that Hayataro, there's something wrong with his holder programming. And Hachimaru is just not impressed with this guy at all. He is likening him to being a lucky cat with a mechanical body, and a lucky cat who used to be human, and a lucky cat who's a dog person, and none of this is just adding up to him. And Daruma states, and believe it or not, I am a samurai. And Hachimaru is just so... he doesn't believe this shit. He's just like, oh, and you're a lucky cat who's a samurai. You can't just be all these things at once. You're all opposites. It makes no sense. And Daruma just doesn't even pay any mind to this, and he asks if he has a walking cane. He asks why he needs one, and he opens his eyes, and he says, I'm blind. And immediately, Hachimaru sends Hayataro to get a cane for him. But of course, Hayataro comes back with the katana. Daruma, again, he seems pretty relaxed. He's not too bothered by it. He says, no, this will work. And he opens up the katana quickly, and then closes it. And Hachimaru says, don't do any samurai stuff here. But immediately, already, the cup is split in half and falls to his sides. And Daruma picks up the toothpick and points it at Hachimaru's face and says, listen closely. The most important things are not found where one can see them. They hide behind illusions and deception. If you remember, that is one of the quotes that the master used at the beginning of the entire chapter. So he states, samurai view matters with the mind's eye. True nature is often that which is hidden, as in my case. And Hachimaru says he's heard that samurai speech before. So, obviously, maybe this might imply that the beginning part was also part of the video game. We're not entirely sure. But Daruma immediately starts lapping up the tea from the cups because he's a cat, so this makes sense. He says, in order to be a samurai, you must be prepared for death. Do you have courage within you? And Hachimaru is immediately so impressed. He's bowing. He says, teach me the secrets to be a samurai, Master Daruma. And Daruma's just like, please don't call me master. He has his own master. It seems like that must be a little awkward to have your own master when you still consider yourself to be a pupil and then have someone else ask. He, says he hasn't accepted him yet, and he asks him to show him his katana form, but Hachimaru cannot even pick up this katana. And he asks not to point, sharp objects at him, and to go easy on him because he hates sharp objects. He's afraid of pain. And Daruma's just like, and you want to be a samurai? It seems that they've given up on this, and they're sitting together, and Daruma is asking, he's never even been outside, and he says no, and Daruma says, well, that's why you have these cables, correct? And he says, yeah, and he explains he's hooked up to the life support system in the house, and that he has been a weak little runt on the verge of death ever since he was born. And so he states that his dad built the whole life support system for me, and he calls it this big ugly ball and chain. And Daruma says, but you were worried about your father, indicating towards the wish. And Hachimaru pulls back on that, and he states, no, that's not what I meant at all. It's just more convenient having around to do stuff for me. So once I get this off, and I'm free, I don't want to ever see him again. So he's acting kind of a brat. So Daruma sees entirely through this, and states that they say that the more two people fight, the closer they are. Another example of true nature being hidden. So again, he is repeating what the master had said, and by looking at how Daruma looks, it is pretty clear that he was probably the pupil that the master was talking to at the beginning. Hachimaru pushes this aside. He doesn't really like being called out like that. And he says, you don't know anything about me and my dad, and even if you might be my master. And Daruma thinks this is amusing and says, you have the potential to be a good samurai, but you are not suited to be a samurai, so the deal is off. And Hachimaru gets upset by this and says, let me guess, there's no way a frail little toothpick like me could possibly make it as a samurai, right? And, Daruma states he can't see, so physical form isn't an issue, and it's not his mental form either. And, he goes quiet when Hachimaru gets upset about this, and Hachimaru realizes it's because he's not prepared for death, and he says, I am prepared for death. if it means I can become a samurai. And he picks up this fruit knife that they had been using to cut the snacks with each other, and he points it at his stomach to indicate committing seppuku. And we cut back to the boss and the dad, and it's back onto the pendant again, and the boss says that key, the one you have hanging around your neck, he says, it's a lion dog pattern, a key that bites evil to keep it away, yes? And the lion dog was something that we saw in the video game as well, that the wandering lone wolf used as his holder. So the boss says that that is a key that holds back a samurai soul, and he explains that, you know, a samurai carries a special soul inside of their cyborg body, and that samurai's true weapon is not the metal blade at their side, but the samurai soul within them. And he is, you know, handling the key around the dad's neck, and he says that he's been looking for this particular one for a very long time, and he wants the samurai soul of the famed blade, Dojikiri Takasuna, known as the blood-sucking sword, and he asks where he's hidden it. And the dad is very nervous, and he says he doesn't know what that means. Immediately, the underlings grab him, and the boss puts his hands on the dad's head, and it seems with this samurai cyborg body, he can access his memories, and he says that he's found it. He sees where he's hiding the key. So the horse holder then takes the locker ball, and the boss gets onto the holder, and the dad says, where are you going? And he says, well, you'll find out soon. And he leaves the dad there being held down by the underlings, and they fly off. We cut back to Hachimaru, who's like sweating nervously with the fruit knife pointed at his stomach, and Daruma says, if you died to become a samurai, that would truly be a dog's death. A samurai's courage does not stem from that. You know, this, again, is a throwback to the game, where the man in black said to the wandering lone wolf that if you die recklessly, then that would be a dog's death. And the wandering lone wolf had said back to him, if that was his righteous calling to die a dog's death, then it would be an honor. Whereas Daruma here is saying that if he just dies to become a samurai and for nothing else, that would be a dog's death, implying that there was no righteous calling to die for this. Without any answer from Hachimaru, Daruma senses something is wrong and grabs the katana, and in comes the boss. And luckily Daruma, with the collector's sword, blocks the katana of the boss. Then Daruma says Kongo Yasha style, and continues with Sumujikaze Pack Whirlwind, and whirls around the boss, hitting him. Hachimaru, I believe, is speaking here, but I can't tell if it's Hachimaru or the boss, who lost an arm from this technique, and he says, that technique, are you? And Daruma states, I am indeed an initiate of the Kongo Yasha style. My name is Daruma. And the Kongo Yasha style is the same style that the wandering lone wolf had used. And Daruma states, I hate keeping the cat in the bag. It's not my nature to stay quiet and hide my identity. And Hachimaru is recognizing this whole speech from the video game. The boss states, the wandering lone wolf, but why are you here and in that form? So obviously it's true that this is the wandering lone wolf, and Hachimaru says, just like in the game. And Daruma reveals that he created this game and sent it across the galactic net so that youngsters, I guess, so young people who were drawn to samurai like Hachimaru would play it and find it. And so Daruma says that Hachimaru is the 8th person that he's met in person due to this game. And the boss is just like, I see they're just ignoring me, huh? And the holder of the bosses projects out a screen to show the dad all beat up and held by the underlings, and he has a knife to his neck. And he asks, Hachimaru, are you safe? And Hachimaru's like, Dad? Very upset about this, obviously. And Daruma, he is immediately like, oh shit, this is a bad situation. And the boss says, now don't make any sudden moves. One word from me, and this old man dies. And Daruma is immediately pissed off about this. He says, you're a coward, and you call yourself a Bushi warrior. And the holder immediately starts charging a beam and fires it out at Daruma and slices through his body. And the boss isn't even bothered by any of this. He's just like, I'm a samurai. I'm not a Bushi. a Ronin, though. So a Ronin is just an outlawed samurai, I'm going to say. And he makes fun of, Daruma and says, look at you, a legendary dog samurai slumming in a cat-modeled robot on a little remote planet. So obviously this is a smaller planet compared to all the other planets. He is the wandering lone wolf, and he's stuck in this body. Now, I don't know if they're using robot and cyborg interchangeably, because he did say that being a samurai means having a cyborg body, but we're just going to have to find out in later chapters, I think. And so, the boss states to Hachimaru, and now you'll die for this brat, just like the dog you are. And he's talking to Daruma and says, I'm guessing you must have really taken a shine to this one, indicating Hachimaru. Hayatara tries to fight against the boss, and he just stomps on Hayatara and destroys him, and you can see his circuitry and gears and springs flying out of him. And this just immediately upsets Hachimaru. The dad's upset, and he's just asking how could this have happened. And Hachimaru runs towards the boss, calling him a monster, but his cables stop him from going outside. So he stopped, and the boss states, listen to you yapping, like a little pup chained to a post saves me the trouble of tying you up. And he grabs the key that he had stolen from the dad, and he shows it to Hachimaru, and he says, you recognize this, right? This is the key to the place where the samurai soul of Dojikiri Takasuna is held. And the hiding place is, and he rips off some of Hachimaru's clothing. He says, inside of you. And you can see above his heart there is a sort of box with a key insert. And the key immediately finds its place to its hole. And, the boss tells Hachimaru, don't struggle or your dad will die. The dad's screaming stop, while the boss explains that his heart is running off of the energy of that hallowed blade. However, this key alone will not open your chest. It also requires an identification code. And the locker ball gets dropped by the horse holder. He says in that code, and he brings out the seppuku knife from the locker ball, and he brings it over to Hachimaru and says, is the end of your heartbeat. And he hands him the knife and says, use this to commit seppuku. Only then will I spare your father. And he's obviously faced with a very tough choice here. He doesn't know about the locker balls. He doesn't know that, by committing seppuku with a knife from a locker ball, he could become a samurai. He just thinks that he will have to die here. And his dad immediately is telling him, don't do it, because he knows that if you're not compatible with the locker ball, you could die. You're going to actually just die. But Hachimaru takes the blade and says, you better be telling the truth. And the boss states that he might be a Ronin, but he is honorable. He has his own code. So I guess this means that Ronin don't have to be dishonorable. They're just going against the law, and I guess maybe their calling or even their duty to protect the princess and the planet. But the dad's telling him, don't do it. A son must not die before his father. It must not happen. And this is a part where I got very emotional when I first read it. It's very touching in that you see in the past that, Hachimaru, when he's a kid, he has to drink this liquid diet, and his dad's caring about him. He's like, well, you have to because you have allergies. And his dad gets him a little cute little bear holder. And Hachimaru's, just being a brat, and he's saying, he'd rather make his own. And his dad's telling him, don't be more of an ingrate. I thought you hated me and wanted me off your back. Why would you do this for me? And you see that, Hachimaru would ignore messages from his dad, and it cuts to even when they had their fight earlier. He's saying he hates the pain, he hates the needles, but most of all, he hates his dad. And his dad says, hate me all you want. I'll do whatever it takes to protect you and keep you alive. That's what it means to be a parent. And Hachimaru is shaking, and he says, of course, that's not true. And he's crying, and he says, I've always loved you, Dad. Of course I have. And his dad is crying too on his end. He says, stop. And Hachimaru says, so obviously I'll do whatever it takes to protect you. And he thinks to himself, and keep you alive. Obviously this parallels to what his dad had told him earlier, and thrusts the blade into his stomach. And his dad is crying and collapses onto the ground. And Hachimaru is just dead and slumped over. And the boss waits a second, but then he says, I thought maybe there was a chance, given that the legendary dog samurai put his hopes into you, but you just ended up being like the rest. I guess he's not a great judge of character. And he pulls out the soul from Hachimaru. And it turns into this red blade, and the boss is very, very excited about this. He says, oh, I see why you're called the Bloodsucker. It's a crimson blade. He slices the wheelchair model in half. The father is crying and still on the ground, and it's just a sad scene. The boss is looking at it, and he states, "Nice katana. Maybe I'll give it another test. A samurai soul like this could fetch $2 billion on the market." So he doesn't even want to keep it. He's just going to sell it. And you see that, Daruma has a blade sticking out of his chest from the holder, that Hachimaru has the knife in his stomach. Hayataro is, dead on the ground. But the locker ball is shining with light. And out pops cylinders, and it shines, and Hachimaru starts rising. Mechanisms happen, and parts attach to him and form with him, and the cables are lost, and a key is formed, and suddenly, a form is created around Hachimaru, and the boss is just realizing that this is happening, and he's just like, holy shit, is this happening? And, Hachimaru has now a cyborg body, and he's just like, what is this? And he's immediately just moving around, and he's just like surprised. He's like, I'm standing without a cane, and there's no cords in my back. And Daruma, is shocked, and he's like, Hachimaru, you have just received the mercy of Fudo Myo, the warrior god, and gained the power of the threefold body, meaning Hachimaru is so shocked, Daruma saying, you have become a samurai. And this is clearly a very important moment for Hachimaru here. But he is just like, I don't get what happened. But he's more concerned about Daruma. But Daruma says, this is not enough to kill me. I will explain more later. He instructs Hachimaru to put his hand on Hayataro. So Daruma tells him to wish for the form he's meant to have. And Hachimaru does so. Daruma says, that is better. He's your holder, just for you. Take good care of him. And Hayataro turns into the lion dog that we saw from the video game, which obviously we saw was a projection of probably what happened with Daruma, in a sense. The boss gets on his holder horse and says, this can't be, how dare you? And he's charging towards Hachimaru, and Hachimaru says, hey, Hayataro, let's do the usual trick. And Hayataro has the sheath of the blade, while the blade is with Hachimaru. They charge after the boss, and Hayataro goes after him with the sheath, which the boss deflects, but he almost gets hit by the blade by Hachimaru. However, the holder has him protected and puts up a shield, and the holder immediately combines most of himself, or themself, to the boss and gives him samurai armor. And Hachimaru recognizes it, and he says, samurai armor, just like in the game. And the boss says, you took me by surprise, but it pleases me. Now I can take your samurai soul as well. Hachimaru tries to, attack him, but he can't. And the boss says it's pointless, that no ordinary katana can damage a samurai suit of armor. And Daruma just immediately snipes him. It looks like it's probably even with the blade that was from the holder that shot him earlier, because he now doesn't have it sticking out of him. But destroys the armor off of the boss. And Daruma says, now you can cut him. And he tells Hachimaru, show me the righteousness of your calling. Hachimaru turns and, slices at the boss. But he loses his right arm. The right arm is just laying on the ground. But the boss still falls because the left arm that had the cane installed into it actually has now a blade given by the cyborg body. And the boss is surprised it's a hidden blade, and Hachimaru says, technically it's a cane, Dad made it for me. It's one of those things that supports me. Daruma says, suffer a flesh wound so that you may break bone. Again, another quote showing that he is the wandering lone wolf. The boss is just like deforming. He says, no, how could I lose to this boy I don't understand? And Daruma says, you have eyes, but you do not use them to see, and that leaves you blind to the painful consequences. To my eyes, you're nothing but a frail, broken toothpick. Which, those are two callbacks. One is to just blindness in general, and also to what he had said to Hachimaru, where, he says he can't see him, he couldn't see his frail form, and Hachimaru had said, do you think I'm just, frail and broken? And he states that Though the boss may seem strong, he was nothing but a broken toothpick. Hachimaru's arm grows back, and he's just looking at this new form, and Daruma says, "This is the real you, Hachimaru, and you will no longer be standing on the sidelines, so now you can take action." And they say, "Let's go get his dad." And they ride off on Hayataro into the night, and Daruma is thanking up to his master, and he states, "Master, on the 8th try, I finally found the one. His name is Hachimaru, and he's the real key." He states, "My calling seemed to be 7 steps forward, 8 steps back. But now it's more like 7 times fallen, 8 times risen." And you see Hachimaru reuniting with his dad, and they're hugging and celebrating. And Daruma looks up at the sky and says, "There are 6 keys remaining, and the journey ahead will be long and arduous, but perhaps with him at my side." And you can see in the sky, there are shooting stars. Well, that was long. I apologize. But we have to get through everything so we know what we're talking about. So definitely an exciting, very fun first chapter. I'm so happy that we got 72 pages. It definitely makes me excited for everything. So let's go through with a little bit of more of a surface level analysis on everything. So we're going to start with the characters that were introduced, because these are obviously very important characters to the series, and we're going to have to know about them for this series and for what's to come ahead. So we're going to start with Hachimaru. So what we know about Hachimaru immediately is that his body was very frail. He had to be on the life support system. He couldn't even lift up a katana, which I believe they're only about maybe 2 pounds, maybe even less. I'm not really sure. I'd have to look up the actual weight of a katana. Hachimaru was just frail. He had a prosthetic arm and leg. He was hooked up in the system. He couldn't even survive without, the life support system for more than 3 minutes. And he even had a samurai soul inside of him that was keeping his heart beating. What we learn about him throughout this chapter is that he wants to become a samurai, and a lot of this is because he admires them for being strong, for protecting people, for doing everything that he cannot do as a person. We see that in his personality, is someone who wants to become these great people. But, there's some problems. Obviously, he's afraid of pain and needles and sharp objects. He has never even been outside. He seems to not really have much interaction with other people. It seems to be that's just sort of his dad that he gets interaction with. And because of this, he thinks that, he's pretty suspicious about most people and their intentions towards him. He thinks his dad is lying to him about giving him this, mobile wheelchair. And he thinks that Daruma is lying to him about being a samurai and thinks it's because of his frail body. But it turns out that, obviously, the dad could not give him his wheelchair because he needed to get a locker ball. And Daruma, thinks that Hachimaru's ambitions were in the wrong place, that it was just to become a samurai that he was willing to die. But it was when he sacrificed himself for his dad in a most honorable way that he was given his cyborg body from Fudo. So we can see from Hachimaru that he pretty much assumes what people are thinking about him. He also seems to be just generally upset about his situations. Now, obviously, his personality might take a shift now that he has a new cyborg body and can walk around and everything. But from what we can see, he isn't the most stubborn. He seems to think about things clearly enough in that he can see that he might be wrong when he's arguing with his dad, and that he can interpret what people are finding wrong with his own ambitions. He also thinks quickly in that he strategized quickly against the boss during their fight. Because of this, he seems to be a little less open about his emotions because he's always thinking about things. He seems to want to try to hide his true emotions and feelings about people, especially towards people. When he wished to Daruma to make sure his dad was safe, he immediately pulled back when he realized that someone was listening to him. And, he tells Daruma that his dad just makes things convenient for him. He doesn't actually care about him. Once he leaves, he's never coming back. He's never going to go see him when he gets set free. And obviously this is a lie because he does kill himself for his dad. And then when he does get turned to a cyborg, he immediately goes to get his dad and save him from the underlings. he doesn't really like being called out about it, because when Daruma did, he pushed it aside and wanted to get to the actual, like, a more substantial conversation in his mind. But overall, Hachimaru seems to be a good protagonist. He seems to have more of a clear thinking head. It seems we're going to have some, like, decent strategy come out when it comes to battles and fights. It seems he's competent enough to even, like, he programmed Hayataro, so I'm not really worried about Hachimaru as a protagonist. Is he my favorite character yet? Well, I'm not sure. We're only on the first chapter. But he seems to be, overall, a pretty good protagonist. He was a disabled protagonist, and now it wasn't until he was granted a wish and given an entire robot body that he could actually move. So I think definitely he's a good personification. He kept his glasses, which I think is very interesting. A lot of shonen protagonists don't really have glasses, so I think that was just an interesting design choice to keep his glasses with him. But I definitely think it was a good move. So yeah, definitely I like Hachimaru overall. I think he's going to be a very good character. I think he's going to be a good character for this series. He seems to, like, know enough about samurai that we don't need to go through a whole big exposition and tutorial with him, but he's definitely, like, new to being a samurai, and so we're going to watch his growth as the series continues. We'll go to Hayataro next, who is his holder. Obviously, from what we can tell in the series, in that Hayataro is the lion dog, there might be an implication that Daruma, who was the wandering lone wolf, lost his body, that is this threefold body. That might have been his samurai body, and the soul itself got captured, and the lion dog's soul might have been the one that the dad captured, and Hayataro is part of this. And now Hachimaru has it. Even though the wandering lone wolf, or Daruma, we're probably just going to call him Daruma. Daruma is now a cat, but that might be why he knew what to do with it, because he was told that he was the shooting star, which granted a wish, and he seemed to be able to direct Hachimaru correctly to Hayataro. Hayataro, he seemed to have the inclination, was the lion dog holder. And this is foreshadowed throughout the chapter, where no one's sure if he's a dog or a cat, and you can see that this makes sense now that we know that there is a lion dog, that he was acting like a cat and a dog because he is a cat and a dog. And you can also see that, maybe Hayataro knew, in a sense, that he was the lion dog holder because he kept fetching the katana for Hachimaru instead of his canes. And this seems to be a constant thing because, Hachimaru was scolding him for doing it over and over early on in the chapter. I want to go to the dad next because I really like the dad, actually. He is someone who obviously cares very deeply about Hachimaru. It seems that obviously he keeps secrets. He didn't really tell, Hachimaru the reason to why he couldn't make the mobile suit for him. And he was keeping a secret about how Hachimaru is even alive, which is that somehow he captured this soul of the lion dog, of this bloodsucker blade, and put it inside of Hachimaru. We don't know how that happened, and hopefully that will be revealed later on. But it seems like he keeps secrets. But other than from the secrets that he keeps, he is as honest as he can be with Hachimaru. He's very stern with him, but he does tell him, like, that he loves him. He tries to do best by him. He tries to get him his own holder. He gets him video games. He takes care of him every single day. But obviously, he might even regret whatever happened with the, bloodsucker soul being within Hachimaru, because he says that he finds Bushi to be arrogant and reproachable. And this might be because of the soul that he had somehow figured out to capture, but he also might find them arrogant, and, he might just not like them because if they found out what happened and how Hachimaru had a soul within him, they would go after him. And it seemed like that assumption was right because it did happen. But he wants Hachimaru to have a good life, and he wants him to get out and leave and be able to live, but he, like any parent, wants to protect him and wants to help him. He definitely, could be worse, but the fact that he helped him every single day, and he took care of him, and he just treated him like a father treats a son, and they would fight and everything, but, you know, he even didn't want Hachimaru to die, and he was so heartbroken when he did commit seppuku in front of him. I definitely think that he's a good character. I hope we see more of him. I'm not sure, because I don't know if he's really going to come along with them to this journey to get the 6 other keys for Pandora's box. But I do think that, you know, I do hope and think that we will see more of him, because this is definitely leaving open a mystery of how the hell did he get this soul? What the fuck? Is he a Bushi? Was he a Bushi? We're not entirely sure. There has to be a reason why he just finds them arrogant, and why he finds them to be, you know, detestable. But obviously, you know, he cares. He's smart enough that he built a whole life support system for Hachimaru. And it had to have been quick enough that, you know, Hachimaru, when he was born, he said he was on the verge of death. So he inserts this soul into him and then immediately builds this life support system. He's obviously a smart guy. There's got to be something going on. I'm just, God, I'm so excited to see where the dad goes, because there's a lot of mystery surrounding him. And I hope that this turns into an actual, like, plot point and an actual questioning. We might even get it next chapter. I'm not sure, but I'm super excited to see where it goes. So we're going to go to Daruma next. Daruma, really cool. I love Daruma. I love mentors. In Naruto, I really liked Jiraiya. And I think Daruma is definitely a mentor that we're going to have a lot of fun with. In that he seems to be a little inexperienced himself on how to be a mentor. He doesn't even take the role of mentor towards Hachimaru immediately, and I think there might be a hesitancy because he has his own master who he is trying to do well by. But he does take the role upon himself, and it seems that this might be because that the implication that his soul, that his threefold body might be Hachimaru's now, but we're not entirely sure because he has indicated that this is a different body, and he doesn't even know if this body is correct for him, and he states that to his master at the beginning. But while he was the wandering lone wolf, we could see that he was a reckless person. He did respect his master greatly. He even, like, copies her quotes, which is very funny. So it shows he's not the wisest guy. His master was extremely wise and had a lot of advice and lessons for him, but he you know, only takes what his master gives him and regurgitates it. So I'm not sure how many of the lessons we're going to hear him tell Hachimaru are going to be the same ones that his master told him. But this also might come from the fact that he seems to be young and inexperienced as a person and as a samurai. But he does seem to be pretty logical. He also seems to be strategic, which makes him a good master for Hachimaru. He did say he was a dog person, which was a good indication that he was the wandering lone wolf. And he knew that Hayatara was supposed to be the lion dog. So, and he even seemed to maybe even indicate that he had an inkling that Hayatara was supposed to be, because he said a cat-ish dog, which he would know from his own lion dog. But he does seem to be an open and honest person, which is a good contrast to his dad, who has been keeping secrets a lot of the time, where, you know, he tells Hachimaru that he hasn't accepted him for a pupil and why he wouldn't accept him for a pupil, and he does allow room for Hachimaru to figure out the answer to himself. What we want to know, I think, is that how he like lost his body, how it might have even gotten into possession of his dad, how, if he is actually like still a samurai because of the cyborg robot thing that I indicated earlier. I would love to know why he was given a cat body. I don't know if this was from Fudo or not, but very funny. I find it very funny that he drinks like a cat. And he is considered to be all opposites, but that might have also been from Fudo. He is blind, which was, I think, implied with him being the wandering lone wolf and him fighting with his eyes closed. So he might be blind, and that's okay, obviously. But he can still see around him, and he still fights very well because he sees with his mind's eye, as his master indicated. And yeah, so we don't know if he's actually a robot or a cyborg, or if they're using those interchangeably. I kind of hope it's used interchangeably and that Fudo just gave him a new body, but we're going to have to wait and find out. The next character I want to go into is the boss, because this is going to be quick, and, you know, I think he's dead. He's going to be dead. We're not really going to hear about him again. It's kind of like, if you read the first chapter of Naruto, you know Mizuki, and he pretty much does not show up ever again after his conflict. This is probably following the same vein. So, the boss, he's just an asshole. He seems pretty observant, and he's just used to give out world-building information and exposition, and show us how a cyborg is and how they can be pretty much generally assholes. But, I think he did a good job. He showed us that holders can also be more than just, like, lions or dogs or wolves. They can be horses. So, it's exciting to see what kind of holders we're going to get to see. Next is the next and last one, who I think is most important. You'd think I might say the Master. The Master we don't really know much about. When we see more of her, I think we'll go into more in depth with her. But I want to talk about Fudo Myo. For one thing, within the series, he is a warrior god who protected the galaxy as the shooting star. He seems to be merciful to those who are willing to follow this samurai code of honor and follow their righteous calling. He gives cyborg bodies to people he deems that are worthy of becoming samurai, and the boss even indicated that, he chooses who the samurai is. Now, what's interesting is Fudo Myo is not actually just a character, he is a real Japanese deity. He actually is a major deity in Buddhism. He converts anger into compassion, and he cuts ties of negative feelings to liberate people from suffering through self-control. So he actually, there is a depiction of him on the second panel in the first chapter. It's a pretty accurate depiction. He looks very fearsome, but he is actually a pretty compassionate and merciful god, which follows into his depiction within the manga. He is a warrior god, and he is a guide of actually the deceased souls, so it makes sense that to become a samurai, you have to die. He is surrounded by flames a lot of the time, which symbolizes burning anger and passion to purify the mind. So we might see a lot of fire symbolism surrounding him. He has a strong determination to stay where he stands. They say that he, stays on the rock that he stands on. With that in mind, it shows that he also is very determined, and he wants people to stick probably to the righteous calling within the actual series. In his depictions, he usually has a rope in one hand to bind violent passions and evil, and he has a sword, which is called the Kurikara, in the other hand, and he uses that to cut through ignorance and delusion, and it also signifies wisdom. He is usually accompanied by the 8 great youths in artwork. And when there are rituals for him, monks inscribe wishes to burn at the altar. And he was actually a very popular samurai deity and guardian figure when samurai were very popular in Japan. So this makes sense why this character exists, because he is a real depiction of a real guardian figure for samurai in the past. The accompaniment of the 8 great youths is probably how Samurai 8 comes about. This might indicate that within the series we're going to meet probably 7 other samurai, or maybe even 6, because you could say that Daruma and Hachimaru are 2 already. And Daruma has stated that there are 6 other keys. So I think that from that we're going to probably meet the other, 8 great youths that are in conjunct to Fudo Myo. And also, this just shows that this was very well researched, because he does grant wishes. He is called a shooting star, which shooting stars in Japanese culture also are for wishes, as is in Western culture, where you wish upon a star for things. So it seems to be that a lot of this is lining up in that he will be a powerful character throughout the series, and I'm sure that we're going to see a lot of, we might even meet him, which I think would be very interesting. Next is the world building that we're going to go through. Most of this is just going to be about Bushi and the Bushi culture, samurais, things like that. I think this is really interesting, honestly. I think they did a great job just setting up everything that we need to know immediately. So basically, Bushi is derived from Bushido, which, as I said earlier, it is the Japanese collective term for the codes of honor of samurai life. And Bushi can refer to samurai. It is an interchangeable term, but in this series, as we know, Bushi are humans and samurai are cyborgs. They are strong warriors that protect others. They use a katana, whereas for samurai, it's more important to use your soul and use your essence that was given to you by Fudo. The samurai, obviously, we know that they come from locker balls. You have to commit seppuku to become a samurai, and you have to be compatible with the locker ball or you die. And we heard from the boss what happens with the samurai body. It consists of a memory unit, that's the key, and that resembles a spine with the box at the top that's supposed to be, I guess, your brain. You can't die from losing limbs. You can walk through space as well as on Earth, which is how I guess they are the ones who are protecting the entire galaxy and planet. They carry a special soul within them, and that's their samurai soul, and that is what is applied, I guess, to their blades and allows for them to fight more. I think we're going to obviously hear more about this as the series progresses. And so to become a samurai as opposed to a bushi, you have to be prepared to die. But this means, I believe how Fudo seems to be through mercy and wisdom and purification and stuff, to have impure intentions, such as when Hachimaru stated that, he would kill himself to become a samurai. That was an impure intention. Whereas he killed himself to protect his dad, which was a pure intention of dying, and it was not to become a samurai. And Fudo decided to have mercy upon him and bring him back to life as a samurai because he followed a righteous calling, or he killed himself for something good that can now become a righteous calling. And righteous callings seem to be something that are within the samurai culture. They're given to you by Fudo. They're something that are prescribed to you as fate. And I think based on this, it's something that you have to just figure out on your own. Though we don't know what the master knows about her righteous calling, so we're going to obviously, I think, see that as time goes on. A cool thing, I think, is also their samurai weapons, in that their soul seems to be a part of the weapon, and that's what gives it its power, and that's what can cut through samurai armor, which is also very cool. The samurai armor comes from their holders and is applied to them and protects them, because I guess the holders can be healed. I'm not sure if it's every samurai who has that power or if it's just Hachimaru who has that power, but it seems that they can be fixed and healed, and so the holder having the ability to give samurai armor to their samurai is very important. And it seems that they have powers. I don't know if Hachimaru will be able to access memories like the boss did, but that would be kind of cool. But we'll have to see. He might just have these healing abilities. That might have just been something that Fudo gave him in the course of that time. We're not entirely sure. But I think that's something that will be explored later on in the series as well. So, as we know, there is a princess that needs to be protected. We don't really know who the princess is, but I hope that we get to see her soon. Maybe not for a while, though. The master might be protecting the princess, but it also seems that the master is just protecting the galaxy in general, stopping the destruction of things. And we're going to find out, obviously, who is causing the destruction. Maybe it is even the princess. We have no idea. Another few points we learned about Bushi culture and stuff is that there's Ronin, who are outlawed samurai. They can still be honorable, as the boss indicated, but I'm sure we're going to find ones who just completely absconded from any sort of honor, and I'm sure Fudo has some sort of punishment for that. I'm certain we're going to see that later on. And we also know that there are fighting styles, but we only saw one, which is the Kongo Yasha style, which I assume that's what Hachimaru is going to be learning throughout his time, because we know that Daruma, as the Wandering Lone Wolf, used that style. He was taught that style, assumedly, so I think that Hachimaru is also going to learn this style of fighting. And we'll see other styles later on, I'm sure. The dad mentioned the Bushi Legion, but we didn't hear anything else about that then. I'm not sure what is going to happen with that. Who knows? We're going to find out, I'm sure. The Bushi Legion might just be the samurai who are in space protecting everything. Who knows? Again, we talked about Fudo Mio. He is a warrior god. He grants wishes. That seems to be his big thing. He is the protector of the deceased. He brings people back to life. I'm sure we're going to see a lot more of him and hear a lot more about him. He seems to be an important figure for this world. I definitely want to talk about the technology, because this is cool. I love that Samurai 8 is integrating technology into a pre-modern concept, which is samurai. So obviously we have the cyborgs, which super cool. I don't know how they're functioning. I guess it doesn't matter. It's magic. We don't have to worry about it. It's like deity magic. The locker balls are part of that. They're like stars given from Fudo that are deity magic. Very cool. But let's go into the things that I guess seem to be more so a product of the human race rather than a product of Fudo himself. So like holders. Holders seem to be something that conjuncts with Fudo in that they are robot animals. They seem to help the general population. You can buy one or find one as a civilian and make one as your own. But for samurai, they also provide armor to the samurai. So I don't know if they also gain like a soul. I don't know if they also gain a soul as being samurai. I guess we're going to have to find out about that. We have flying bikes. We have guns. We have mobile suits and life support systems. This is all stuff that we wish we had more advanced technology on. The life support systems are great. You can have one in your house that lets you move around and everything. It doesn't have to be an iron lung sort of deal. It doesn't have to be a hospitalization sort of deal. You can have one in your house and you can be provided enough power through, I don't know, solar panels or the magic of Fudo or something to, support the life of, a teenage boy who has been on the verge of death since he was born. Guns don't seem to be very big. They actually look a little primitive compared to modern day guns, which is fine. I don't think guns are really going to be much of an issue here. The Skype screens, very cool. I'm really into being able to see technology-wise how magic and the use of samurai, they can project to each other like that. So I don't know if that's an ability that most regular people can have. So I guess the Skype screens fall into like an ability that Fudo gave them. The flying bikes, pretty standard. If you've seen Dragon Ball, you know that flying bikes are always cool, always good. They're usually pretty fast. And the mobile suit, the wheelchair or whatever, that seems to be something that definitely like can be possible, but it needs extra help from something like a locker ball. It needs a soul from it. And it seems that the dad had enough like information about these samurai souls that he was going to probably put one into the mobile suit and use that to power this mobile suit and keep Hachimaru alive. But honestly, this just throws back to he has a lot of secrets that we would love to uncover. So yeah, that's that for the world building. I just want to go into Daruma for a second. The actual concepts of them. I think this is a really important thing that we should take away, especially knowing Daruma as a character already. So we're just going to go through a quick history lesson that Daruma is a good luck charm that was originated in the city of Takasaki. They were given to parishioners every new year to bring happiness and prosperity, to ward off accidents and misfortune. Eventually, people were entrusted in creating their own Daruma at the beginning of each year. Their eyes are intentionally left blank so that one is filled in with a goal or wish in mind. The second eye can be filled in when that goal or wish is achieved. The whole point of this is to give you something to work for and to stay determined on. The Daruma, they get burned at the end of the year, and a new one is created or purchased. So you have a new goal or you have a new wish in mind. This actually might foreshadow if Daruma does die, he might be burned. It might be from fire. The design of Daruma itself are actually based off of the crane and the tortoise. And it's to match the Japanese proverb of the crane lives 1,000 years, the tortoise 10,000 years. And as we saw, Daruma was actually in a tortoise when he was launched out of the whale at the beginning of the whole chapter. So this might actually be throwing back to that proverb, and that Daruma may not even die. He might live 10,000 years, and that his prosperity, his goals, his righteous calling may allow him to live very long. But it also looked like a sea turtle, so I'm not really sure if we can tie this together to be a tortoise or not. And just another interesting point that I don't know if this is actually intentional or not, but the Daruma may have inspired Russian nesting dolls. And this would be an interesting tie-in to how Daruma's master was saying that his form might be a chance to give him a true meaning to his nature, or that he also has what is hidden beneath him, and to use his mind's eye, and, implying all these things about the true nature of people. It also might be a hint towards Daruma taking an alternate form, as we saw in that he was the wandering lone wolf, but then now he has a new body, which could be, the Russian nesting doll sort of thing. He opened up into a new body, and now he has a new form. Or it could even indicate that samurai are Russian nesting dolls, in a sense in that how their own keys are hidden within their contents. Their souls are hidden within themselves, and you have to open them up to see what's inside. Again, this might just be a pure coincidence, but we have no idea. That wouldn't be the first part in the series where we see an integration of other cultures, because we do see a mention of Pandora's box. I don't know completely the story of Pandora's box. I believe it's changed by different sources, but the basics of Pandora's box is that Pandora was given this box by Zeus because Prometheus stole fire from heaven from Zeus, and as punishment, he knew that Prometheus's brother was going to marry Pandora, and he wanted to show them not to mess with the gods, and gave it to Pandora, who he knew would open the box out of curiosity. When she did, it unleashed illness and death and other evils to the world, and she closed the box as immediately as she could. He gave it to her because he knew she would not open the box with malice, but curiosity, and it was just a lesson to tell them, don't steal our fucking fire from heaven anymore. It's interesting that Kishimoto is integrating Greek mythology into this, and it's also interesting that Fudo, who is a merciful, wise god who wants to purify and help people, put the inscription of how to help the world inside of Pandora's box. And that you need 7 keys to open it. So I'm not really sure where this is going. I don't know if Pandora's box is actually a bad thing in this context of this story. Or maybe that's where Fudo keeps all the bad things. And so one who is willing to go through all the trials and illness and death and other evils of the world is someone who is willing to face an evil that is to destroy the galaxy. We're not really sure what's going to happen there. But it's an interesting point to this. That's the biggest plot point so far, other than like Hachimaru becoming a samurai and Daruma's master is a mystery and the dad's secrets are a mystery, but we already discussed those. As for the fight scenes, we don't have much to discuss here that we haven't already discussed, in that there is revealed to be fighting styles. Daruma gets taken out like by the holder right away. It's not much of a fight scene between Daruma and the boss. The holder, can shoot a blade, I guess. Cool. Nice information to know. The fight between the boss and Hachimaru was pretty much the same exact fight between the man in black and the wandering lone wolf. But I guess what we can learn from that fight is that Hachimaru is someone who can strategize and learn quickly from strategies that he's seen, and so he's probably going to learn some pretty cool strategies and implement them as he goes. Alright, finally, one last bit is we're going to go to the deeper level stuff, but the deeper level stuff, we pretty much covered most of it. We're just going to touch on the themes that we see throughout the series so far, and hopefully will permeate through the rest of the series. One of the themes that we've seen that was pretty prevalent throughout the series is blindness. We see that Daruma is blind, and that he is blind when he is the wandering lone wolf. His master even quoted about keeping your mind's eye open and not using your actual eyes to see the dead, forgotten leaves. Instead, what is important is the things that you cannot see. So not being able to see and blindness is very important within the aspect of this series. So that's very good. Daruma even mentions, to the boss, you have eyes, but you do not use them to see. And that leaves you blind to painful consequences. So blindness is probably going to be a theme throughout this series. It might have just been a theme throughout the chapter. All of these might have just been themes throughout the chapter. But it seems that the ability to see is important and may not even be important, in a sense, to the series and to the characters. So we might meet a lot of blind characters, actually. Another theme that we also see is dogs. We see cats too, obviously. But the lucky cat sort of deal definitely intertwines itself with the Daruma, where lucky cats are seen to have been inspired off of Daruma, which is why Daruma is probably a cat, and, Hachimaru likens him to a lucky cat. But we're talking about dogs right now. So with dogs, we see that Daruma states he's a dog lover. There is a lion dog. Hayataru is a cattish dog. There is the wandering lone wolf, which is comparable to a dog. They talk about dying a dog's death multiple times, which means a dishonorable or shameful death. The boss even likens Hachimaru to a puppy chained to a post. This isn't a bad thing, though, because dogs are seen as very loyal creatures, and with samurai, it seems that to be able to be loyal and to be able to have that sort of loyalty and dedication would resound with the values of Fudo. So dogs seem to be a theme we might see more things about dogs. It seems that, dogs will be a thing, especially since Hachimaru has a lion dog now for his holder. We also have wishes as a theme, which is shown in that there's shooting stars prevalent, which is indicative of Fudo. And as we said earlier, Fudo is a god of wishes, so it would make sense that he is likened to the shooting star in which you wish on. You make a wish when you do the eye on the Daruma. Daruma even told Hachimaru to make a wish when it came to restoring Hayataru. And obviously wishes are part of this. We're probably going to see a lot of cool wishes implemented throughout the series that Fudo is granting for others, or maybe even that Fudo is denying. And we're going to see the values of Fudo throughout this whole series that will intertwine with this. Another important theme that I think we're gonna really have to absorb and take in with this is death. Again, we have the dog's death that was discussed, but we also have seppuku. And also, since we know that Fudo is a deity of the deceased, this all makes sense. That death will be a very prevalent thing throughout the series. We have to get used to it. Characters are going to die. Hachimaru died, technically, already. Daruma probably already died, and that's why he has a new body. And we're going to have to come into terms with this, especially with seppuku. This is part of being prepared to die, because in Japanese culture, seppuku was used to reserve honor for the samurai before they were captured and tortured. And so they found that the best and most honorable way to, not betray their country or their region or what have you was to disembowel themselves. It was also seen as the most honorable form of capital punishment for a samurai who has committed a severe offense. So this is definitely intertwined with Japanese culture. So we're probably going to see a lot of seppuku and a lot of references to that, but we're also going to see, I think, a lot of honor intertwined with death throughout this. Courage is definitely intertwined with this. There is the courage to die. There is the courage to honor your righteous calling. So it seems that for samurai, courage is a big part of their bushido. And it's interesting because if they perceive someone else to be a coward, they seem to be very dishonorable. The boss calls his underling a coward when he kills him for not being able to commit seppuku. And Daruma also calls the boss a coward for not being an honorable samurai and using a hostage to get his way with Hachimaru and Daruma. So courage, I think, is also going to be an important factor. I'm sure Hachimaru is going to be a very courageous protagonist because of this, and it will be seen as reckless. And finally, we have the number 8, which the number 8 also falls into the luck portion of theme within the series, because we have the number 8, which is a very lucky number in Japan. And as I said at the beginning, Hachi means 8 in Japanese. So Hachimaru, his name is supposed to be very lucky. And I think he was very lucky for being turned into a cyborg. And the 8 is indicated by Daruma a few times, where he states that Hachimaru is the 8th person that he has found through this galactic net game. And also he states that he thought his calling was 7 steps forward, 8 steps back. But it turns out it probably is 7 times fallen, 8 times risen. So that may also indicate lives of a cat. So he might have 1 life left for 9 lives, but we'll see. So that's it. That's all I have to discuss. This is long. This is such a long episode. I apologize for that. All other episodes will not be as fucking long as this. In conclusion, I think we have a lot to work off of in this series. I think we are set up for a lot of good themes. We're set up with a lot of good Japanese cultural references. There's a lot of tie-ins together that I think are going to show foreshadowing already. We have some good mysteries already, such as the dad, why Pandora's box is the chosen form for all of this. And I'm not sure where to predict where we're going to go from here, because obviously it's chapter 1. I can't make any predictions right now. But again, if I messed up in any way, I do have someone who will be checking my pronunciations. If you believe I didn't go too in-depth with any sort of content, if you think I brushed over something that should have been talked about, you can send any concerns, complaints, what have you, at samurai8cast@gmail.com. It's samurai, the number 8, cast, C-A-S-T, @gmail.com. Be sure to subscribe, tell your friends, follow us on Twitter. It's at samurai8cast as well for there. The links will be in the description below. And I hope to see you next week. I hope you enjoyed. Goodbye.